Mark lived on a quiet street where every driveway was clean and every lawn looked the same shade of green. He liked that. He liked order, calm, and simple routines. Each morning, he walked his dog around the block, waved at the mail carrier, and checked the sky like a person checks the time. Behind his house, set back from the oak trees, sat a neat, low hangar. It was painted the same soft color as his house and had a small sign that read "Authorized Access." Inside, a sleek helicopter rested on wheeled skids. It did not shout for attention. It waited, just like Mark. He did not talk much about himself. He helped when help was needed. When a neighbor's fence leaned after a rainy week, he brought his level and a few screws and made it stand straight again. When Mrs. Patel down the street dropped a bag of oranges, he picked them up with a grin and walked them to her door. He used a calm voice, and people felt safe around him. Many neighbors liked him for that. They called him reliable. They called him steady. They also called him mysterious, because no one knew why a man with such a quiet life had a helicopter in his backyard. Some people asked, but he always answered in the same careful way. He said the helicopter was part of his work and part of his training. He said it was not a toy. He said it was used to help people in trouble. He said it with a gentle smile and then changed the subject to the weather, or a new tree someone planted, or the school car wash fundraiser. He never showed off. He never tried to impress. He cared more about being useful than being seen. If anyone stood by the hangar door, they would see how well he cared for the aircraft. The floor was clean enough to reflect light. Tools hung in. Perfect rows. A small whiteboard listed dates and simple notes. Hydraulic check, belt tension, battery test. He never ran the rotor at home. He never started the engine there. For all live checks, he towed the helicopter with a quiet electric tug, loaded it on a trailer, and took it to a remote airfield out by the river. He followed rules the way a good musician follows the beat. He liked rules. Rules kept people safe. Children were curious, of course. Little Liam from 2 houses down liked to wave at the hangar and shout, "Airplane!" Mark laughed softly and explained the difference. "It's a helicopter," he said. "It goes up and down like a lift." Once, with Liam's parents present, he showed the boy a bright orange rescue harness and explained in simple words how it helped lift people to safety. He spoke slowly and with respect because he believed knowledge itself was a kind of safety. Late at night, his phone often sat beside a packed bag. The bag held a uniform, a small first aid kit, a flashlight, and a folder with laminated checklists. He kept the ringer low, but there was a special tone that cut through sleep like a bell. When it sounded, he would sit up, focus, and move with quiet speed. He never said where he went or who called him. He never posted photos. He never told stories on the sidewalk. He simply returned, sometimes at sunrise, and then walked the dog and waved at the mail carrier like he always did. The neighborhood had an HOA, and the HOA had many rules. The rules were mostly about paint colors, mailbox shapes, trash bins, and lawn height. They also spoke about structures of unusual appearance. The HOA met each month in the clubhouse near the pond. People brought spreadsheets and cookies. They spoke in gentle voices about parking and playground hours. Most of the time, it was peaceful, but now and then, eyes drifted toward the topic that sat behind Mark's house. Some residents shrugged, others frowned. An item on the agenda read, "Discussion, detached building and equipment visibility." There was one board member, a tall man named Greg, who liked everything to match. He measured hedges with his eyes. He spoke about harmony and order. "A neighborhood is a shared picture," he would say, tapping his papers. "We all paint it together." To him, a hangar and a helicopter did not fit the picture. To him, it looked like a bold brushstroke across a soft canvas. He did not raise his voice, but his questions were sharp. "Is it permitted?" he asked. "Is it safe? Is it allowed by the covenants?" People nodded, even if they were not sure. It is easy to agree with a strong voice in a quiet room. Not everyone felt that way. Mrs. Patel liked the idea of a person who could help in an emergency. She had once seen a car stop in the middle of the road and a stranger do chest compressions until help arrived. She believed that people who trained for hard moments were good to have nearby. "He is respectful," she told her friend. "He keeps it quiet. He never bothers anyone." Her friend said the hangar still made her uneasy. "If it is for rescue?" the friend asked. "Why here?" Mrs. Patel did not know how to answer, but her eyes stayed kind. Rumors like to travel. Someone on the neighborhood group page wrote that Mark was a movie pilot. Someone else wrote that he worked for a tech billionaire. Someone joked that he was preparing for the end of the world. It was all guesswork. Mark saw the posts because a neighbor showed him on a phone. He read them, smiled softly, and said, "People are curious. That's normal." Then he offered to help fix a squeaky gate and went home to log a maintenance check. One afternoon, a short summer storm rolled over the roofs and left branches and damp sidewalks behind. The power flickered and went dark for 3 houses on the east corner. Mark walked over with a small generator and a bundle of heavy-duty cords. He asked each homeowner if they needed their freezer kept cold or a medical device powered. He listened to every answer. He set up what was needed and left a hand-written note with clear steps for turning it off. He did not advertise it. He did not ask for thanks. He checked again after sunset. The next morning, when the power came back, people smiled at him a little differently. Back in his hangar, the air smelled like light oil and fresh cardboard. He kept a folder on the workbench with signed permits and inspection reports from the city. Years ago, when he planned the building, he met with the inspector and with a structural engineer. He followed every line of the code. The foundation was properly laid. The roof frame had the correct bracing. The electrical work was done by a licensed team. A fire extinguisher hung near the door. A second one sat near the rear. He knew where each was with his eyes closed. He believed preparation was a form of care. The monthly HOA newsletter arrived in the mail. The front page had a cheerful note about the community picnic. Inside, a paragraph reminded residents to keep large equipment out of sight when possible. It did not name him. It did not need to. He read it carefully and then read it again. He looked out at the hangar's clean lines and the trees that softened its shape. He believed he had done everything right. Still, he respected the shared picture. He closed the newsletter, placed it under his permit folder, and made a small note to add more shrubs in the fall. On Friday evenings, he liked to sit on the porch with a cup of tea. He watched people walk their dogs and push strollers. He listened to the soft sounds that mean a place is peaceful. Across the street, the clubhouse lights were on. He could hear the faint buzz of voices from the monthly meeting. He saw silhouettes moving past the windows. He recognized the way someone pointed at a screen. He could guess the topics without hearing them. He lifted his cup and waved when a few people came out for air. Some waved back. Greg did not. The next morning, a teenager named Maya knocked on his door, holding a small drone in both hands like a fragile bird. "It won't fly straight," she said, half laughing, half worried. Mark invited her to the porch. He sat and listened as she explained what she had tried. He asked what she wanted the drone to do. He told her about wind, battery health, and simple checks. He also talked about rules for flying, where to fly, and how to think about safety even before takeoff. She nodded a lot. She said thank you. When she left, she walked with a new kind of care, and that made him happy. On Sunday, the neighborhood held a small block gathering. Someone set out fresh lemonade. Children played chalk games. A folding table held salads and chips. People stood in clusters and talked about schools and weekend plans. A new couple approached Mark and asked, in a friendly way, about the hangar. He answered in the same careful way he always did. "It is for rescue work and training," he said. "I keep it quiet. I follow the rules. It is not a hobby." They nodded. They seemed satisfied. Someone else nearby raised an eyebrow and said, "Rescue work? Around here?" He smiled and said, "Sometimes help takes off from unexpected places." That night, he returned to the hangar and did what he always did. He checked the whiteboard and added a date. He inspected a cable and wrote 2 words in his log. All good. He rolled a soft cover over the seats. He clicked off the bright overhead lights, then turned on a small lamp near the door. He looked back once, not in worry but in appreciation. The helicopter was not just metal and wires. To him, it was a promise. It was a way to keep people safe when the ground became hard and the sky became the only path. In his bedroom, the go bag sat ready on a chair. The phone rested on the nightstand. He pulled the curtains closed, leaving a small gap so the morning light could find him. He thought about the week, about the fence he fixed, about the generator he lent, about the young student with the drone. He thought about the newsletter and the clubhouse lights. He hoped the shrubs would please everyone. He hoped the picture would feel shared again. Just before midnight, a siren sounded somewhere far away. It faded and was replaced. Monday began with sunlight on mailboxes and a light wind moving the flags at the clubhouse. Mark walked his dog, nodded to 2 joggers, and stopped at Mrs. Patel's garden to admire her new mint plant. He had that easy, calm way that made people relax, but this morning he felt a small weight in his chest. The HOA meeting had run late the night before. He did not go inside. He watched from his porch and noticed how long the light stayed on. He could tell when people were debating. Hands move more. Shadows stretch across the blinds. He told himself, not to guess, but his mind still traced the outline of it. By noon, a message arrived in his inbox. It was polite and firm. "Dear homeowner," it began, "we received multiple concerns regarding a detached structure and the visibility of large equipment. It invited him to attend next month's meeting and to bring documentation of approvals." He read it twice. Then he set the phone down, walked out to the hangar, and opened the permit folder. The papers were in order with dates and signatures. The final inspection had a neat stamp. The city had approved the building and the setback. He had followed every step. He let out a slow breath and felt the weight lift a little. That afternoon, he mowed the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb. Greg walked by in a crisp polo, holding a clipboard. He was friendly on the surface, like a person who practices his smile. "Morning," he said. "Big week, huh?" Mark nodded and kept his tone warm. Greg asked a list of questions that sounded simple but felt pointed. "How often do you use the building? Do you store fuel? Do you run the rotors here?" Mark answered each one clearly. "I store nothing. Flammable. I do all live checks at the river airfield. I respect the neighbors and the rules." Greg made notes. He said, "We just want harmony." Then he moved on. 2 days later, a notice appeared on the community webpage about a safety and aesthetics forum. It said neighbors could share thoughts about unusual structures. The wording was broad, but everyone knew the topic. Comments began to grow under the post. Some were kind. "He's helpful," someone wrote. "He brought us a generator during the outage." Others were cautious. "Rules exist for a reason," one person wrote. "If we allow one exception, what comes next?" A few sounded worried. "What if something goes wrong?" They did not say what wrong meant. Fear often uses short words and leaves long shadows. Mark did not argue online. He believed quiet facts were stronger than loud guesses. He printed copies of his approvals and placed them in a thin binder. He added photos of the hangar's fire extinguishers and the clean work area. He slid in a letter from the city inspector, who had praised the neat wiring. He also wrote a short note in plain language. "I keep all operations away from homes. I am happy to add more screening plants. I am your neighbor and want this place to feel peaceful. He read the note out, loud, and listened for tone. It sounded like him. On Saturday, he drove to the river airfield before dawn. The sky was a soft gray, and the runway lights winked in a slow pattern. He checked the helicopter step by step with a careful hand. A small training flight was scheduled with a regional team that practiced search techniques. He reviewed the plan, lifted off from the empty field, and traced a wide loop over open country. From above, the river looked like a long ribbon. The flight was short and smooth. He returned, logged the hours, and towed the trailer back before most of the neighborhood was awake. He liked being early. Early time is quiet time. The forum at the clubhouse drew a crowd. Folding chairs filled the room, and a long table held pitchers of water and stacks of paper. A diagram of the neighborhood sat on an easel. Greg opened with a tidy speech about shared values and consistency. "We all moved here for a calm and beautiful place," he said. Heads nodded. Then he invited comments. A teacher spoke first, soft and steady. "He has been thoughtful. My windows face his yard and I never hear noise." A man with a small dog said he did not like the industrial look of the building. Mrs. Patel raised her hand. "He is careful," she said. "He helps people. He helped me with my fence." Her voice was gentle, but it carried. When it was Mark's turn, he stood with the binder in his hands. He did not rush. "Thank you for letting me speak," he began. His voice was calm, clear, and kind. He explained how he planned the hangar with the city, how he chose a color that matched his house, how he planted trees to soften the view. He explained that he never ran the engine at home. He explained that safety was his first thought every day. "I am happy to add more screening," he said. "I am happy to show my checklists and logs to any official. I want you to feel safe and comfortable." He did not share his job title. He did not use big words. He talked like a neighbor. Questions followed. "Why do you need it?" someone asked. He answered with care. "It allows quick readiness for training and response, but I take the aircraft off-site for operation." "Are you insured?" another asked. "Yes," he said, and he had documents to show it. A young mother asked, "What if kids wander in?" He pointed to the locked doors, the cameras, the motion lights, and the signs that said authorized access. He added a simple line, "Your children's safety matters to me. I built this with that in mind." A few people smiled at that. They could feel he meant it. After the forum, small groups lingered in the parking lot. Words like variance and screening floated in the air. Greg stood with two board members and drew lines in the air with a pen, measuring nothing and everything. Dana, a newer board member with kind eyes, walked up to Mark. "Thank you for being calm," she said. "It helps." He nodded. He knew calm did not change votes, but it sometimes changed hearts. She asked for a copy of his binder. He handed it over. "We will review," she said. "It may take time." He told her he understood. A week later, a letter arrived by certified mail. It was formal and careful, yet it felt heavy. The HOA cited a section about structures of unusual appearance and another about equipment visible from common areas. It said he had 30 days to remedy the violation, and it listed possible steps: additional screening, repainting, or removal of the equipment. The last phrase held a lot of meaning in few words. He read it 3 times. He underlined the parts about screening and repainting. He circled the word removal and then set the pen down. He did not flare. He made a plan. First, he called the city office and scheduled a meeting with the building official who had signed the final inspection. The official remembered him. "Your file is clean," the man said. "Your structure meets code." Mark asked for a letter to that effect. The official agreed to draft one. Next, Mark called a landscaper. He asked for a design that would add tall evergreens along the fence, a soft hedge near the sidewalk, and a pair of small trees close to the hangar corners. The landscaper liked the idea of a green screen. "It will look like a garden," she said, "not a wall." That sounded right. He also wrote a reply to the HOA. It was brief and respectful. He thanked them for their time. He explained that the city had approved the structure and that he would add extra screening to improve the view. He asked for a meeting with the architectural review committee to go over the landscape plan. He attached a copy of the signed permits and the inspector's note. He did not argue. He did not accuse. He asked for a path forward that made the picture better for everyone. Meanwhile, the neighborhood rhythm continued. He helped Maya adjust the drone's compass and showed her how to use a practice zone far from homes. He fixed a loose mailbox for a retired couple who found tools heavy now. He waved at the mail carrier. He took his dog on morning walks. Yet he felt a quiet pressure, like a hand on his shoulder. He noticed how some people paused their talk when he walked by. He noticed one camera phone pointed at the hangar gate, then slide away. He understood. When people do not know, they imagine. He could not control that. He could only carry himself with care. At the next board meeting, the room was again full. Dana presented the landscape plan he had sent. She pointed to the drawing and described how the evergreens would fill in within one season. Greg flipped through the pages without looking up. "It helps," he said, "but the equipment is still there." A murmur moved through the room. Dana kept her voice steady. "The structure is approved by the city," she said. "Our role is visual impact." A retired engineer raised his hand. "If he adds the trees and it's quiet, I don't see the harm." Greg tapped his pen against his clipboard and said, "We were clear last month." He spoke about precedent and future problems. The board voted to send a final warning. The words sounded harder than the faces in the room. 2 days later, another certified letter arrived. It repeated the earlier points and added a line near the end. "Failure to remove the equipment may result in fines and further action under Section..." The line was long with numbers and letters, but its meaning was simple. He stood at the kitchen counter, the letter open, the house quiet. He poured a glass of water, took a slow sip, and looked out at the trees in his yard. He felt the space between what people thought and what was true. It felt wide. He decided to keep walking across it, step by step, with patience. He set small cameras to watch the fence line and the hangar doors, not because he expected trouble, but because he believed in records. He updated his maintenance log. He moved the binder from the hangar to a fireproof box inside the house. He placed the city officials knew let. The week began with a hopeful sound. Shovels in soil and soft voices measuring space. The landscaper arrived early with a small team, a tape measure, and a plan that looked like a green ribbon along the fence. Tall evergreens went into the earth in straight, respectful lines. Low hedges filled gaps the eye did not notice until they disappeared. 2 young trees stood at the hangar corners like calm friends who agreed to stand guard. Neighbors peeked from porches. Some nodded, some whispered, and some simply watched, surprised at how fast a hard shape could turn gentle when framed by leaves. Mark moved with the crew as a quiet partner. He carried bags of mulch. He set a level across a planting bed. He checked the irrigation lines so each root would get what it needed. When one evergreen leaned a little, he put his hand on the trunk and steadied it until the soil around it held. The foreman smiled. "You have a careful eye," she said. "It's part of my job," he answered, and left it at that. That afternoon, the mail brought another certified letter. He signed for it at the door, thanked the courier, and opened the envelope on the kitchen counter. The letter repeated the board's position in neat paragraphs. It recognized the new screening, but added that the equipment remains inconsistent with community standards. There was a date, 30 days away, with a list of remedies, and a final line with numbers and sections that looked like a fence made of rules. He read it twice. He felt a small ache, the kind you feel when you are trying to meet someone in the middle and the ground still shifts. He set the letter under the permit folder and went outside to bring water to the crew. By sunset, the work was done for the day. The fence line looked softer. The hangar seemed smaller, not in size, but in the way it met the eye. Mrs. Patel came by with a paper cup of tea and a kind look. "It's beautiful," she said. "Thank you for thinking of all of us." He thanked her and handed her a small bag of mulch for her mint plant as a quiet joke. She laughed, and the sound floated into the mild evening air. He walked the new garden with a slow, steady step. He checked the gate, the camera angles, and the small sign that said "Authorized Access." He wiped a smudge off the sign with his sleeve. He put away tools, rolled up a hose, and locked the hangar. Inside, the aircraft sat under its soft cover. He made 3 notes on the whiteboard. Landscaping, 50%. Camera test, okay. Binder, kitchen. The list felt like a simple map in a week that had many turns. After dinner, he sat on the porch with a cup, as he always did. Children drew chalk suns on the sidewalk until the sky made the real ones fade. A pair of runners waved. Greg passed with his clipboard tucked under his arm, looked at the trees, and gave a small, private nod that only someone who watched closely would see. The nod felt more like an acknowledgement than an approval, but even that was something. Dana texted a brief message. "The trees look great, thank you." He replied with equal simplicity, "Appreciate your help." Later, as the house settled, his phone showed a tiny green check mark from the camera system. He opened the app and watched a time lapse of the last hour, leaves moving like a quiet sea, a cat testing a new hedge as if it were a soft wall, porch, lights blinking on one by one. He smiled at the everyday piece of it, then set the phone face down and prepared for bed. The go-bag sat ready on the chair. The folder of permits and letters rested in the fireproof box he had placed by the dresser. He believed in preparation the way a person believes in good posture. It holds you up without anyone seeing the effort. Just after midnight, his dog lifted its head. It was a small movement, but Mark noticed. There was a faint smell at the edge of the air, not strong, just the hint of something hot that should not be hot. The phone buzzed with a gentle tone, motion at the west fence. He tapped the app and saw a still image in gray and white, a shape near the hedge, low to the ground, more shadow than person. The camera caught only a shoulder, the brim of a cap, the outline of a sleeve. The timestamp was precise. He took a breath, calm and full. Before he stood, the second alert came, a different one from a sensor near the hangar door. Heat. He moved to the window and saw a pulse of light too bright for a porch lamp. He dialed for help and spoke in a clear voice. Address, outbuilding, possible fire, no people inside. He slipped on shoes, clicked a flashlight on, and stepped outside. He did not run. He spoke to his dog and closed the door behind him so she would not follow. At the gate, he saw it. A lick of orange at the hangar's base where the siding met the concrete, small and quick. He reached for the closest fire extinguisher. He had hung exactly for a moment like this. He pulled the pin and pressed the handle in practiced bursts, not a panicked spray. The white cloud met the orange and pushed it back, but a glow still lived inside the wall. He did not force it. He stepped away, counted the feet between him and the door, and waited for trained hands. Sirens grew, first faint, then clearer, like a line being drawn from far to near. Neighbors emerged in robes and sweaters, their faces lit by porch lights and worry. "Is everyone okay?" someone asked. "We're okay," he said. "Please give the crews room." He opened the wide gate so the engine could roll in, and then he moved to the side, out of the way, with the calm posture of someone who understands that clear space helps more than busy hands when the right people arrive. The firefighters worked with neat precision. Hoses unfolded. A team checked the panel and made a controlled entry. There was smoke, but not the thick kind. The early call had mattered. They cut a small square in the exterior wall, the size of a service hatch, and spoke to each other in short, useful words. A neighbor recorded on a phone from far back. Another neighbor told him to stop. Mark stayed quiet and watched the angles and the wind. He answered questions simply when asked, "Where is the main shutoff?" "Over there." "Any fuel inside?" "No." "What's in that corner?" "Tools and a storage cabinet." He pointed, they moved, and the glow faded under water and skill. When the crew said, "Under control," the street breathed enough to hear it. A soft cheer rose from 2 houses down, the kind of cheer that is mostly relief. The captain spoke, with Mark under the porch light. His pen moved over a form. "You did the right things," he said. "Early call, clear access. Extinguisher use was good. Then you backed off. That matters." Mark nodded. "Thank you for coming fast." The captain nodded back. "That's what we're here for." He gave a folded sheet with a case number and the words, "Origin under investigation." Police officers arrived to make a report. They were patient and professional. They asked what he had seen and when. He showed them the camera clips on his phone. He forwarded the files. The video showed the fence line, the low shape at 12:03, a quick flash near the wall at 12:04, then the glow. It did not show a face. It did show a direction of travel, a path along the sidewalk, and a partial view of a shoe tread. The officer wrote notes that were neat and square. "We'll pull nearby doorbell footage," she said, "and city cameras, if any." He thanked her for the thoroughness. He did not speculate. He did not point at anyone. He stayed with what the camera showed and what the clock said. When the crews left, the hangar stood changed. The door frame was darkened on one side. Inside, where the cut had been, the wall showed a square of exposed studs. The soft cover on the aircraft had curled at one edge. The cabin paneling near the affected corner wore a dull stain from heat and water. It was not a picture anyone wants to keep, but it told a story that careful people would need to read. He took photos the way he did everything, steady, clear, no drama. He labeled them and stored them in a dated folder. He knew that memory is human, but records are sure. Neighbors came by in small waves once the street was quiet again. Mrs. Patel brought a thermos and a soft scarf. "Are you okay?" she asked, her words warm with care. "I am," he said. "Thank you for asking." Maya stood a few steps behind her with wide, wet eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, as if the evening belonged to her. He shook his head gently. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "We will fix what can be fixed." She looked at the camera above the gate. "It's good you put those up," she said. "Yes," he answered. "It helps to see." Greg arrived later, formal even in a sweatshirt. "This is unfortunate," he said, choosing each syllable. "The board condemns any property damage." The sentence sat carefully between concern and caution. "Thank you," Mark replied. "Safety is my priority. I'll work with investigators and keep the area secure." Greg took a breath as if starting a longer thought, then stopped. "If you need, contacts for contractors, we have a list." "I have a plan," Mark said gently, "but I appreciate the offer." Greg gave a small nod, the same nod from earlier, but his eyes moved from the cut wall to the aircraft and back again, like a person doing math. By dawn, the birds started their morning talk as if nothing had happened. The street returned to its usual colors. Mark made a list at the kitchen table. It had clear steps, contact insurance, call the city building official for inspection of the outer wall, secure the hangar with temporary panels, share footage, with the detective and ask about nearby cameras. Notify the landscaper to pause work near the affected area. Review maintenance logs and note any items affected by heat. Inform his professional contacts, in brief, that the aircraft was currently unavailable. He made each call, wrote down each confirmation number, and placed each printout in a new F. Morning light came in soft and gold, but the news on every screen was dark blue and red with warning banners. A huge storm had formed during the night. It was not here. It was hundreds of miles away, along a wide coast, but its arms were long and strong. The newscaster spoke with careful words. Heavy rain, rising water, bridges closed, hospitals on backup power, neighborhoods cut off. Camera shots showed rooftops like small islands and people waving from upstairs windows. The words, "Federal Response," scrolled under the pictures. Mark stood at his kitchen counter and watched in silence, his hand around a warm mug he did not drink. His phone buzzed once, then again, a rhythm that meant move. A short message from a duty officer said what the news could. Not say, activation, regional airlift tasking, your lead. There were no extra words. There did not need to be. He set the mug down, opened the go bag, and changed into a uniform that lived in the closet for days like this. The fabric was simple and tough. A small patch on his sleeve read, Homeland Security, Airlift. He checked his ID card, his radio, and a thin folder of blank forms. He breathed in, slow and steady, and stepped toward the door. Engines rumbled at the curb. 3 dark SUVs turned onto the street with lights tucked behind the grille and windshields clean and bright. They were not loud. They were certain. The neighbors heard them anyway and drifted to porches. Doors opened. Agents stepped out wearing windbreakers with clear white letters. A woman with a clipboard and calm eyes walked to the porch. "Director," she said with a small nod. "We're set to brief." The word rested in the air like the first drop of rain before a storm. Mark nodded back and guided them inside. They gathered at the dining table. The lead agent unfolded a map and placed colored markers near a cluster of towns along the coast. "Power out across 3 counties," she said. "Water rescues ongoing. Hospital helipad is open but crowded. Staging recommended at River Airfield. Here." She tapped a point on the map not far from the neighborhood. "Contract birds inbound, ETA 2 hours. Coast Guard has 2 more on the way. We need you to stand up the air bridge." She looked at him, not as a neighbor, but as the person he truly was in the wider story. He answered with a clear, simple plan. "We'll use the river airfield as base. 1 lane for fuel, 1 lane for loading. We'll set a whiteboard for tasking and a timing board for turns. Medical priority first, then supplies." While they talked, the street outside gathered its own picture. Mrs. Patel held her mail and forgot to open it. Maya stood with her father, eyes wide but proud. Greg walked from his driveway to the sidewalk and stopped halfway, as if he had stepped into a room he did not expect to enter. The SUVs looked official in a way that made the clubhouse seem small. The sight of the uniform changed the shape of every rumor. He could hear none of that, but he felt the shift through the front windows, the way a sailor feels a wind change without seeing the trees. The team finished the first round of planning. "Do you want to brief from the airfield?" the agent asked. "Yes," he said, "and I want to speak with the HOA board before we move equipment." He knew his neighbors needed clear words and calm steps. He also knew the operation would touch their lives for a short time. Vehicles in and out, maybe a command trailer near the pond for a day. He walked outside with the lead agent at his side. Radios crackled softly. The patch on his sleeve caught the sun. The word "director" reached the sidewalk before he did. "Good morning," he said to the small group that had formed. He kept his voice steady and friendly. "You've probably seen the news. A major storm is causing trouble on the coast. I've been asked to lead an airlift response from our local river airfield. For a day or two, you'll see more vehicles and some federal teams moving through. We will keep noise and disruption as low as we can." He paused. Faces looked back at him with surprise, worry, and something like respect trying to find its feet. Greg cleared his throat. "Lead? As in, you?" His voice carried distance and curiosity. Mark nodded once. "I serve as Tactical Airlift Director for Homeland Security," he said, using simple words. "My job is to organize flights that help people in emergencies." A murmur moved down the sidewalk like a small wave. Mrs. Patel's mouth formed a soft, "Oh." Maya whispered, "I knew it was something big." To no one and everyone. Dana arrived at a careful half-run, a folder hugged to her chest. "You need space?" she asked, direct and helpful. "We can open the clubhouse lot for a temporary trailer if it helps." He smiled with gratitude. "Yes, thank you. A small coordination trailer for a few hours would be useful. We'll keep lanes clear and leave it better than we found it." She nodded, already tapping a message into her phone to unlock gates and inform the grounds crew. The lead agent introduced herself to the neighbors with a brief, kind tone. "We're grateful for your understanding," she said. "This neighborhood is helping people you can't see right now." The sentence was simple and true. It set the street on a new axis, from small worries to larger care. Even Greg stood taller, as if a string had been tied from his shoulders to a good purpose. Within 30 minutes, a small command trailer rolled in and eased into the clubhouse lot. A portable mast went up with a light and a small antenna. A folding table took shape under a simple canopy. On it, a map, a whiteboard, a box of markers, and a stack of clipboards appeared like pieces of a puzzle that knew right where to go. 2 agents set up laptops and tested a secure connection. A logistics officer drew columns on the whiteboard. Aircraft, pilot, task, ETA, next. The lines were straight. The handwriting was clear. At the hangar, a building official arrived to recheck the outer wall and sign off on temporary repairs. He wore a safety vest and the easy confidence of someone who knows the code well. "You did the right things last night," he said, echoing the fire captain's words. "You're good to secure and go." The insurance adjuster came too, took photos with a respectful pace, and promised a fast review. None of them slowed the larger work. He had already decided, until the aircraft passed deeper inspection, he would not fly it. He would lead from the ground and request a substitute. At the river airfield, the picture turned from plan to motion. A pair of contract helicopters arrived first, smooth and purposeful, with crews wearing bright vests and quiet focus. They shut down, rolled toward the makeshift line, and met the logistics officer with clipped nods. "Call signs?" the officer asked. The pilots gave short names. The whiteboard filled. Another aircraft arrived with a Coast Guard crew. A fuel truck parked in a safe zone with cones forming a clear path. A volunteer team from a local group carried water and snacks to a shaded tent. It looked like a small village that had built itself in an hour because it knew how. Mark stood at the center like a calm stone in a river. He did not shout, he pointed, he listened. He asked short questions and gave shorter answers. "How much weight can you take this turn?" 700. "Good. Hospital run, then supplies to the South School." He kept the timing board alive with erasable ink, drawing small circles around tasks that held people on the other end. He said, "People," often. Not loads, not missions. People. It kept everyone's eyes in the right place. Back. In the neighborhood, the clubhouse lot surprised people in the best way. The trailer did not blare, it hummed. Agents came and went with a light footprint, moving chairs back under the canopy when a breeze picked up, picking up a wrapper that a gust threw under a bench. Mrs. Patel brought a tray of sandwiches. She did not ask if it was allowed. She simply carried care in both hands. The lead agent thanked her and put the tray on the break table with a small sign that said, "With gratitude." Maya and her father set out a cooler of bottled water. Dana checked parking cones and greeted each person with a warm nod, the way a good host does at a house that has opened to purpose. Greg approached the trailer once, hands in his pockets, a question on his face. "Is there anything the board should be doing differently?" he asked, in a voice that tried to be both formal and useful. Mark looked up from the whiteboard and chose kindness. "Right now, you're doing the most important thing by giving us space," he said. "After the storm, we can talk about long-term screening and all of that. Today is for people who need help." Greg nodded slowly, as if something tightly wound inside him had been loosened, one click. By midday, the air bridge flowed like a calm heartbeat. Lift, land, refuel, load, depart. Reports came in by radio from the coast. Water dropping, power. Crews moving. A hospital grateful for a generator part brought in a small crate that fit like a puzzle piece in the back of a helicopter. A young mother and her newborn reached a larger hospital when the road washed out. The pilot spoke only 4 words on landing. "Mom and baby stable," and every person near the timing board let out a breath they did not know they were holding. Between taskings, the lead agent handed Mark a folded sheet. "Public Affairs approved a basic statement for the neighborhood," she said. "No sensitive details, just clarity." He read it and smiled. It was simple, respectful, and true. He walked to the clubhouse steps and spoke to the small group gathered there. "Thank you for your patience," he said. "Our teams are moving supplies and helping people reach care. We'll be here until the airfield can handle everything without this trailer. Please let us know if our vehicles block you, and we will move them." A small cheer rose. Dawn came quiet, like the town was taking a deep breath after a long day of worry and work. The command trailer in the clubhouse lot had already moved out. The cones were stacked, the grass was smooth again, and the only sign of yesterday was a rectangle in the lawn where folding tables had pressed the blades flat. Mark walked his dog and checked the new evergreens. The leaves were fresh from a night breeze and looked like they were settling in, learning the shape of this place. He felt the same in a way, settled but aware. The storm work at the river. Airfield would continue for a few days, but the rhythm was steady now. The neighborhood, too, had found a softer step. People waved, people smiled. People said thank you in small, sincere voices that did not need more words. By mid-morning, the detective returned with a measured update. She stood on the porch with a notepad and a calm look that meant progress. The lab had confirmed an accelerant had been used near the hangar wall, but in a small amount, enough to start trouble, not enough to suggest a professional. Doorbell footage from 2 streets over showed a compact car circling the block around. Midnight. Traffic cameras caught the same car near the main road a few minutes later. The plate was a partial, but the letters were clear enough to give the search a shape. "We're closing in," she said. "We're doing this the right way." He nodded and thanked her. He knew patience was part of safety. The call came that afternoon. The detective's voice was steady. "We have 3 individuals in questioning," she said. 2 live here in the community. 1 is served on the Rules Committee. The 3rd is a friend who does not live here." She did not add drama. She offered facts. The 3 had been seen together earlier that week, walking the back path that ran along the fence line. A pair of work gloves in one garage matched fibers found at the scene. A shoe tread lined up with the photo from his camera. Texts on a phone used words like, "teach a lesson," "make a point," and "nobody will get hurt." None of those. Words made the act smaller. They only made the intentions clear. News moves fast in a small place. Before sunset, the HOA announced a special open meeting in the clubhouse. Chairs filled the room. Some faces were red from emotion. Some were pale from worry. Greg sat at the front, no clipboard this time. Dana kept a quiet row of papers in order. The president read a short statement. It said that law enforcement had Identified residents believed to be involved in the hangar fire. It said the HOA condemned any act that harmed property or peace. It said the board would cooperate fully and would review past communications to correct tone and approach. The room felt like a string that had been pulled tight for weeks and was finally, carefully being loosened. People spoke. They did not shout. They used small, honest words. A retiree said she had felt uneasy but never wanted harm. A young father said rules matter, but kindness matters more. Mrs. Patel's voice was soft but firm. "I was proud to see our street help others," she said. "I hope we can help each other with the same heart." A teenager asked whether the community could build a safety culture that included real training and simple plans. The idea made heads nod. It felt good to reach for something better instead of sitting in something broken. When it was his turn, Mark stood without notes. He looked around the room like a neighbor, not a title. "Thank you for listening," he said. "Thank you for caring about this place. I want to be clear about a few things so there is no confusion." He kept his voice even. He explained that he never ran the aircraft at home, that the city had approved the structure, that safety was his first thought each day. He explained that the hangar had been damaged but could be repaired, and the aircraft would be fully inspected and tested off-site before any future use. He added one simple sentence that held everything. "Your trust matters to me." The line settled like a good anchor. The next days were full of work that was not dramatic, but was very important. Insurance adjusters walked through the hangar and made lists in quiet tones. The building officials signed off on a plan to replace the damaged wall section with a fire-rated panel and added a suggestion for an extra exterior sensor that could alarm directly to the fire department. The aviation maintenance team arrived at the river airfield, towed the aircraft into a protected bay, and began a deeper inspection. They moved like people who respect both machines and the lives those machines touch. He thanked each one with simple words and clear eyes. Gratitude, like safety, is a practice. Law enforcement shared their next steps when appropriate. The 3 individuals were charged with property damage and reckless endangerment. The words sounded heavy because they were heavy. The detective said the case would move forward in the usual way. Court dates, legal counsel, the slow, careful path that protects everyone's rights. The HOA issued a formal apology to Mark and to the community for failing to lower tensions sooner. The board also voted to create a Civility and Safety Charter, a one-page document written in plain language that guided how concerns should be raised and how the board should respond. It included a simple promise: we will focus on facts, not fear. Greg came by one afternoon with empty hands and a real expression. He did not try to manage his way through the moment. He stood on the porch and took a breath that turned into a small, brave sentence. "I'm sorry," he said. "I let my love for order become a hard edge. I didn't light any fires, but I did light up a room in the wrong way." It was a humble admission. It reached farther than he knew. Mark listened, nodded, and thanked him for saying what was true. "We can do better together," he said. "Let's start there." They shook hands like neighbors who had walked through a tight passage and found a wider street. The HOA held a volunteer day to plant more trees along the back path and to repaint a few aging fences that had nothing to do with the hangar. It was not a grand gesture. It was a day of steady motion, laughter, and shared effort. Maya carried a paint tray like it was a silver platter. A little boy named Theo watered the new hedge with the serious duty of a ship captain. Someone brought a speaker that played old songs softly, the kind you hum without noticing. Work smoothed the sharp memory of that night into a lesson everyone could hold without pain. At the river airfield, the replacement aircraft kept the air bridge moving until the partner agency rotated it out. The storm region got better by the hour. Water receded, roads opened, and families reunited. An email arrived from a hospital director, a short note with a long feeling inside it. "Your team's airlift kept our ICU operating," it said. We will never forget it. The logistics officer printed the letter and pinned it on the operations board with a small pushpin. The pushpin was clear, and the letter spoke for itself. A week later, the maintenance team returned with their report on the damaged aircraft. The news was measured, and in its way, kind. The structure was sound. Several components needed to be replaced due to heat exposure and water contact. The cabin would be retrimmed. Avionics would be tested twice. Federal funds and insurance together would cover the cost. The timeline was weeks, not months. He felt the weight lift off his chest and settle somewhere soft. The machine would fly again. More importantly, people would be safer because it would fly right. The HOA asked whether the community wanted a simple safety open house at the clubhouse. The idea was to share clear information about emergency preparedness and to give people a chance to ask questions in a calm room. Mark agreed, with one boundary: no engines, no rotors, nothing that would make the neighborhood feel like a staging area. "We can teach a lot with a whiteboard and a calm voice," he said with a smile. On the day of the event, the clubhouse looked like a school gym on a science night. Tables held flashlights, first aid kits, and printed checklists. The building official explained smoke alarms with the steady charm of someone who has changed 100 batteries. The fire captain showed how to use an extinguisher with short bursts. Mark spoke about plans, radios, and the simple power of a family meeting point. He kept it human. He kept it simple. People leaned in and listened. At the end, a small line formed. Neighbors asked gentle questions, not just about the hangar, but about how to care for each other when the wind turns or the lights go out. A teenager asked how to be useful during emergencies. "Start by being steady," he said. "Learn basic skills. Be kind. Keep a list of people on your street who might need help." It was not dramatic advice. It was the kind that changes places. Dana closed the evening with a short thank you and a practical promise. The board would send a monthly note with one safety tip, one plant care tip, and one community kindness story. The idea made people smile. It felt like the right size for this place. Life moved forward in its gentle rhythm. The lawns stayed the same shade of green. The mail carrier waved. The new trees grew an inch you could not see, then another. The temporary wall panel at the hangar was replaced by a strong, clean section that looked like it had always been there. The authorized access sign shone a little brighter, not because the letters changed, but because the meaning was now known. It stood for care. It stood for quiet duty. One evening, Greg and Dana knocked together. They carried a small envelope and a larger idea. Inside the envelope was a card with many signatures and a simple phrase: "Thank you for who you are." The larger idea was a scholarship from the HOA for a local STU